A very happy Dussehra to all. Festivals provide rich material for stories, and today I am delighted to share my story, The Best Hanuman, from my collection Friendship Stories with you. So, shall we find out who the best Hanuman is? Anita clasped the shiny string of beads round her neck and examined herself in the mirror. The reflection wasn't too clear because the mirror, which hung on the soot-grimed wall of their one-room tenement, was old and tarnished. All the same, what she saw satisfied her. Her new, almost yellow satin kurta worn over a matching salwar brightened up her peaky little face. So did the gold and red bindi she had borrowed from her mother. Amma had grumbled a bit, saying that at 12 she was too young to dress up so much, but had finally agreed. Flinging a spangled chunni round her neck, she ran and peeped out of the window. The brilliant October sunshine was slowly dissolving into a shadowy dusk, and the narrow lane seemed noisier than usual. Vendors pushing hand carts laden with vegetables and fruit competed with those hawking shimmering glass bangles, toy bows and arrows, and Hanuman and Ravana masks, all yelling to draw attention to their wares. The festival of Dussehra was just a few days away, and the excitement seemed to infect everyone. "He'll be here any minute," her mother's voice came from behind her. It was the Ramleela that made Dussehra so special for Anita, and her brother Mohan had planned to take her to the big Ramleela today. The enactment of the story of Ram's adventures went on for 10 days and kept Anita enthralled. Ram was so good, so brave, his wife Sita so gentle and pretty, Lakshman such a devoted brother. Ram's exile to the forest brought tears to her eyes, as did Sita's abduction by the wicked Ravana. Ram's loyal follower, the monkey god Hanuman, performed feats of strength which quite took her breath away, while the capers of his monkey army made her laugh till her stomach ached. And when Ram finally defeated the monstrous Ravana, she cheered as loudly as she could. On these 10 days, the daily drudgery passed by as pleasantly as a song from one of our favorite Hindi movies. Rushing home from school, quickly bolting down a cold chapati, and then dashing off again to help her mother with her afternoon round of cleaning and washing dishes in rich people's houses, hardly seemed a grind as she waited for the evening to come. And this evening was going to be special. Her older brother Mohan had said he'd take her to the big fancy Ramleela, which was far more elaborate than anything that she had ever seen. Hundreds and thousands of rupees are spent on the sets alone, Mohan had said. They say Hanumanji actually flies. How do they manage that? Anita had asked, wide-eyed. They have ways, Mohan had shrugged. Anita suspected he didn't know either, but thought it better to keep quiet, just in case Mohan got irritated and called off the plan. Anita Didi, an all too familiar voice wiped the smile from her face. It was Veena, her young neighbour, who lived close by. Though she was barely 7 years old, she was very attached to Anita. Anita was fond of her too, but sometimes she got fed up of babysitting Veena. Had Veena got wind of their plans? If she saw Anita all dressed up, she'd insist on tagging along. How would they look after her? Veena was hard to control. She might even get lost in the crowd. Aren't you going to open the door? Her mother scolded as Veena rattled the door chain loudly. Anita's thin face bunched into a mask of irritation as she stomped to the door. Oh, just look at you, Veena gasped. All dressed up. I know you're going to the big Ramleela. And sure enough, just as Anita had been dreading, she whined, I want to come too. Can't I, Mossy? Amma smiled. Of course, child. But first you must go and ask your mother. The moment Veena left, Anita exploded. Amma, why did you have to agree? How will we take care of her? She is not a babe in arms, her mother replied, frowning. She continued in a gentler tone. You know how much her father helps us. It was he who got Mohan that job in the grocery store and found us money for rent when we were short last month. It's a small thing to do in return. Anita's face went still. She knew very well how dependent they were on Veena's father, Shivdas Chacha. He had stood by them ever since her father had died in a road accident. Well, she thought, sighing, the pest would have to be tolerated as best they could. But why was Mohan taking so long? Amma was lighting the kerosene stove, preparing to roll out the chapatis. Normally, Anita helped her, but she didn't want to get flour all over her nice clothes. She went and sat outside near the door so she could spot Mohan the moment he turned the corner. She had 4 10-rupee notes rolled up in a handkerchief. Money Amma had allowed her to keep when she was paid last month. She had planned to spend it at the Ramleela on chole, aloo tikki and whatever other mouth-watering goodies were on offer there. Of course, Mohan would have enough cash for the bus fare and the snacks, but Anita wanted to spend her money too. The thought of having her own money to do as she wished was so exhilarating. It wiped out that horrid feeling of being needy and helpless always. Another idea, a rather crazy one, had been buzzing in her mind. She could donate the money for a token award for the best actor, the way she had seen people do at the smaller Ramleelas organized near their house. She imagined them announcing, for the actor playing the part of Hanumanji, Anita Rani is pleased to announce a prize of 40 rupees. Her face flushed at the thought. People who would wonder who the generous lady was, and the applause that followed would be for her as much as for the actor. Yes, she wasn't too hard up to express her appreciation for something she had enjoyed, so she resisted the temptation to spend the money on anything else. A boy carrying a stand of toy bows and arrows, red in color, wrapped with silver tinsel, and swords made of foil and cardboard, came into view. When they were little, Mohan would always buy a set. She was smiling at the memory when Veena came tearing down the road. Hasn't Mohan Bhaiya come as yet? She squealed. We'll be late. Oh, I want to buy a sword. What'll you do with it? Anita frowned. Play Ramleela till Mohan Bhaiya comes. Anita suppressed an exasperated sigh. Don't be silly. Girls don't play with swords. Of course they do. What about the Rani of Jhansi? Veena pouted. Don't you want me to be brave? Then her large eyes narrowed. Oh, sorry, I forgot. You couldn't be having money. I'll go home. No! Anita's voice sounded loud in her own ears. I've got some. Her throat felt funny and swollen as she took out the much folded notes and beckoned to the vendor. She tried not to think about the grandiose plans she had made for the money and concentrated on haggling with the hawker and managed to save half of it. Veena began to flourish her sword. Imitating the fencing bouts she had seen in the movies and almost missed hitting a woman who was passing by in the crowded street. Sit down, Anita hissed. I'll tell you the story of today's episode. It's very sad. Lord Ram is going to be banished to the forest. I want to hear Hanuman's story, Veena insisted. How he flew over the seas and brought back a whole mountain to get Sanjeevani, the miraculous herb, to save Lakshman's life. Oh, look! There's a man selling Hanuman masks. I want one! I want one! Girls can play at being anything, Veena said quickly. And I like Hanumanji best in the Ramleela. And I want to give you a good spanking, Anita thought. She pulled out the 2 10-rupee notes she had left. Thankfully, the man agreed to sell the plastic mask for that amount. She slipped the elastic band over Veena's curls and said, Okay, sit down and I'll tell you the story. Inwardly, she was cursing Mohan for taking so long. She would have saved her money if he'd come on time. She began mechanically noticing that one by one the lights were coming on in the houses down the street. Girls, come and eat, Amma's voice interrupted her thoughts. No, Mossy, no, Veena called, springing up. I'm not hungry. Come and watch my Ramleela. See, I'm Hanumanji. I'm going to carry the whole mountain back so the doctor can find the herb himself. Veena began to scamper about like a monkey. Amma giggled like a girl, hiding her mouth with the end of her sari. Anita couldn't help smiling too. Veena's act was so comical. Several other laughs rang out, and someone clapped and cried out, Jai Hanumanji ki! With a start, Anita noticed that some passers-by had stopped and were watching Veena's antics with great amusement. Stop it, she hissed, suddenly self-conscious. But Veena was enjoying all the attention. Her shrill voice drowned Anita's out as she proclaimed, Anita Didi, that Ravan mask will be just right for you, pointing to a replica of the 10-headed demon that was among the vendors' wares. If you put it on, we can play at a proper Ramleela. There was a huge outburst of laughter. A proper Ramleela! A short, stout man guffawed. But this Ravan is too small and puny. He'll be knocked down before the battle begins. More laughter. A wave of fury swept over Anita. Why did she have to put up with all this? I act Ravan? You horrid girl! She burst out, angry tears pouring down her cheeks. I spent all my money buying you a sword and a mask. I'm taking you to the Ramleela too, and still you insist on making fun of me. Arey, what's all this? In the faint half-light, Anita glimpsed a tall, lean figure with a familiar gait coming down the street, white teeth gleaming in a dark face. Mohan Bhaiya! Mohan Bhaiya! Both girls called out together. It's just a game, isn't it? Mohan said, patting Anita's flaming cheek. And this Ramleela seems even more entertaining than the big one. We won't have such a pretty Ravan there, nor a Hanuman for that matter, he grinned. Anita wiped her eyes with a corner of her chunni carefully. Are we ready to leave? Or do I have a minute to make myself pretty too? Mohan went on. Unable to speak, Anita nodded vigorously. And then a small hand clutched hers. Please don't cry, Anita Didi. Something papery scratched her palm. That short man gave it to me, Veena whispered. He said I was the best Hanuman he'd ever seen. And he'd played the role many times, so he should know. And he gave me these passes. He said they're for the big Ramleela and we deserved really good seats. I even asked for an extra one for Mohan Bhaiya. Anita stared at the crumpled note. 10, no, 50 rupees. She pushed it back into Veena's hand. But the little girl wailed, You're still angry with me. I didn't mean to upset you. I thought you'd have fun playing Ravan. Anita sighed and hugged Veena. It's okay, she whispered. I'm sorry for acting so silly. The big Ramleela was even grander than Anita had imagined. And when Anita Rani announced her award for the actor who played Sita, the applause was deafening. She had to agree, though, that Veena was not that much of a pest. After all, she was the best Hanuman ever. I hope you enjoyed this story. Thanks so much for listening and a very happy Dussehra again.